Are we live?
Yeah, I think so.
We are live!
Hopefully.
We are live.
Again, it's been 3 weeks.
Look, we're consistently inconsistent, but that's why you love us. Welcome to episode 12 of Food Got Another Potpourri!
Welcome.
FGP!
Oh, yeah, we got new shirts.
We got shirts!
Look at that.
Food Got Another Potpourri, that's the logo! Boom!
Of course, we're not selling merch. We just have shirts for ourselves because my little brother decided to make shirts for my birthday, which is pretty cool.
Also, happy birthday, Paul.
Thank you.
Yes. And also, thank you to Paul's little brother for making us these awesome shirts.
Yes.
If you want Food Got Another Potpourri merch, put it in the comments. We might consider it. So, yeah.
Limited only.
Yeah. These are pretty dope shirts.
Yeah.
You either get black or minion yellow, whichever one you prefer.
Yeah.
But
There's only 2 options.
yes, that gives you a more calm persona, like Paul is, a little bit more chill, and then this is mine, the minion. Apple, banana.
Minion definitely describes you well. No kidding.
Yeah, there only really needs to be one of me, though. If there were many of me, then there would be minions. So
True.
my dad actually, my dad is bald, clean up top, shiny, and he has blue shorts and a yellow shirt that's pretty much this yellow. And Mom literally walked out of his room one day, and Mom just busted out laughing. He's like, "What's wrong with you?" She's like, "You look like a minion." So I was like, my mom, she's often the one getting roasted. She's very rarely the roaster. She got him that day, and that one stuck like glue, just stuck to him. He is a minion. So
Baldness run in the family.
Yeah. Well, supposedly you get your hair from your mom, so hopefully, but he's also short too, so that does not apply to me. So that's nice.
Oh.
I'll be Kevin. Kevin's the tall one, right? Oh my gosh.
Yes, you will be Kevin.
I'll be Kevin if I shave this all off. Maybe one day. One could only hope. So
One can only hope you go bald.
I'd be okay with it. I've had enough hairstyles where I don't know what to do with this. So
I hope I don't go bald.
yeah. The pressure to keep hairstyles professional. I had a mohawk for the longest time. In high school.
I can't see it.
I loved it. It was so good. I miss my mohawk, and now I have to keep it professional. So no more mohawk. So I'm like, at this point, I might as well be dead hair-wise. So if I have to shave it off, so be it.
Right.
Makes it really easy.
If I can't have my mohawk, might as well be bald.
Might as well be bald.
Or dead.
So yes. But yes. So trying to stay on topic this time.
Yes.
Freedom and vaccine mandates, some really important topics that we are covering today.
Yes. And it's pretty widely discussed over the internet.
Yeah, pretty important in the news. And I think it in the context of vaccine mandates and the language around censorship, which we've talked about multiple times, it gets this common thread of freedom. What is freedom? What is, and we'll get to that later on. We'll probably start with vaccine mandates first, but we'll get to a conversation about that where
I think freedom kind of ties into what we were discussing last week, actually.
Exactly. So, so let's start with vaccine mandates because this is something that's going on big now in California. California. He's not there anymore, but I can't help it. Well, he's there. He's just not governor. That was wrong. But it was really nice to have the Terminator as the governor for California for a long time. That was really nice.
Interesting.
But now you have Hitler Newsom, as they call him. Governor Gavin Newsom is over there. And
I'm not familiar with anyone that's in charge over there.
Yeah, he's the current governor. They have a recall election or whatever going on. So how long that?
I did hear about that.
Yes.
That didn't pass though.
No. So he's still the governor. So Yes, but yeah, Gavin Newsom is the governor over there, and big time vaccine mandates, and in other parts of the world too, you have this conversation around vaccine mandates and workplaces, right? If you want to work in the federal government here in the United States or have a government job in Canada, right? You need to be vaccinated. They are not wavering on that.
At all. Like you can't even get a religious exemption, medical exemption. It's either you have it or you're out, pretty much. From what
I'm
I've
not sure
heard.
if Canada. I'm not sure about Canada's nuance around. I didn't know that for the U.S., but for Canada, I'm not sure. I have to admit whether there's a religious exemption or something like that. I am not 100% sure on that.
I do remember the vaccine mandate for New York was that there was no exemption there.
Mm.
I don't know if that's universally applied because they're not being universally applied at the moment,
No, no.
which is
So, yes, but yeah. So vaccine mandates. What do you think? What's your take on vaccine mandates?
Are we going back to our current vaccine mandates to be able to like attend public schools and such, or are we talking about just COVID-19? Because every vaccine kind of has its own discussion about it.
Right. So let's stay within the realms of the COVID-19 vaccine mandates then.
Honestly, I think it's too soon
Okay.
to mandate any vaccine around COVID vaccine or COVID-19.
Mm.
What about you?
My thing is that uh, for one, companies can do whatever they want. I'm like, all right, you set your own bars, right? Where I think it gets tricky now is governments saying that everyone in a country, right, need to be vaccinated, or people working in the federal government have to be vaccinated. I think that for COVID-19, it's I understand that we have a public health crisis, and I understand that we need a large part of people to be vaccinated for this to be an effective strategy of working.
Vaccinated or immune?
Or yeah, natural antibody, immune, whatever that standard is.
Which I do believe at the current numbers that we're pretty high already with natural immunity and the people vaccinated, right?
Right. So one, I think the question is not whether I'm for or against vaccine. What is the justification for a vaccine mandate? Is it, and I think that this is what happens. People's like, oh, a vaccine mandate is important, and that keeps people well. And then people are saying, well, no, you can't mandate me to do something that I don't want to do.
Yes.
But I think that the broader discussion is, what is the evidence that a mandate would significantly cause a better outcome? Because you are compelling someone to do something at that point.
You're not compelled. You're forcing them to do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but you're you're making someone do something, right? So what is the evidence that would be necessary, right?
Do the pros outweigh the cons, essentially?
Well, not just that. Like, it's just, is there some widespread benefit that comes from implementing that now, after the vaccine has already been out for so long, after so many people have been vaccinated and naturally gotten COVID, right? I understand those numbers are much harder to track and to keep an idea of, but that's why they're funded all this money, right? Is to suss that out and figure it out. And for right now, I'm not seeing anything that screams that a mandate is a good thing to do.
The biggest argument I think I've heard about having the vaccine mandate is protecting you from other people, or protecting other people from you, essentially.
Yes.
Because it's been proven that if you're vaccinated, you're less likely to get COVID. You can still get it. The symptoms that you would receive would be less severe, although you can still die while vaccinated. So there's a lot of exceptions.
Very rare, though.
Rare, yes,
Very, 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 very rare.
but things do still happen.
Yeah.
Um, but the issue being is if someone's already vaccinated, they're already at a low risk. Why would it matter if someone else gets vaccinated or not?
Well, that's the thing. It's the, well, I'm going to do it, and because this person did it, humans seem to have this thing in our brain where it's like, oh, well, everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to see how long I can hold out, and I don't have to, right? What's
Well, I think the mentality is here, I have to do it. Why don't you have to do it kind of deal,
yeah.
rather than hop on the bandwagon. It's more like if I should be forced to do it, you should be forced to do it kind of deal. Kind of like spitefulness.
I don't think so 100% on that. I slightly disagree with it. And here's why. I think that for right now, again, as the vaccines came out, everyone who did it, it was their choice to do so, right?
Yeah.
And by people actively choosing to do that, right, there was this resistance to that, right? This skepticism and resistance, and for whatever form it was there. And I think that was, one, not very well founded. Two, right, I think that it's a pristine lack of social understanding that people are doing this, and because I don't want to be part of those people, I will not do this. And that's how they framed it, instead of let me do my part in making sure that, this doesn't progress, it doesn't get worse. And then you get, because I think part of the mandates now, right, is because at least perception is that base seemed to be much larger. That resistance seemed to be much larger than what people expected.
Well, you also have to take a look at, from an outside perspective, it does appear as if a large portion of the people who did get the vaccine were coerced into getting it. That makes sense. There's all these incentives out there in the States that, hey, get your vaccine. You get put in a lottery to win, a house, guns, money. Even at the university, they said that if you get your vaccine, we'll give you a $25 gift card or $50 gift card.
Right.
To kind of incentivize people getting it.
I think, and that's what I think. I think that a lot of the reasonable numbers say the vaccine is a good thing. One of the things that is not in the vaccine's favor is in people's, albeit I think it comes from a good place a lot of the times, this messaging and incentivizing people to get vaccines, I think that has had a flipped effect in entrenching people more in saying, right, look at this vaccine thing, it's like a cult, right? To the people who are already skeptical. They're like, look, they're trying to feed you lies and do all of these things. It feeds that narrative if that's already what you got going on in your head, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think that, that's just something that has come out of this thing.
I mean, we spoke about the three different types of people about the vaccine. There's the people who are going to get it. There's the people who aren't going to get it. Those are the two biggest groups.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, there's people that are still on the fence, which is kind of like a small portion of people.
Yes. And by the way, if you're still on the fence now, get off the damn fence. Albeit, I'm talking to people in Canada and the U.S. If you're on the fence, get off the damn fence. It's been long enough.
Don't
man.
tell them what to do.
No, get off the fence.
No.
I'm not telling you what to do. I'm saying you can't stay on the fence. I'm just saying you can't stay on the fence.
You can stay on the fence.
Don't stay on the fence.
Stay on the fence.
Don't be that person. Don't be that person. It's been too damn long. If you haven't made up your mind by now, you might not have a mind. Okay? I'm just. What?
Why are you insulting our?
How are you? How are you in Canada or the U.S.? I understand other people in other countries because I spoke to Dr. Smith about this. Right? There are other vaccines. The ones that are popular to us are Johnson and Johnson, Moderna, Pfizer, and to a lesser extent in Canada, AstraZeneca. Right?
Some of those vaccines actually have been banned in other countries.
Yes. Not necessarily for efficacy or safety things. There's a lot of politics to go on with, favoring certain countries. The U.S. was certainly favored in terms of rollout of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines and J&J vaccines. So
Also, I don't know if you heard this news story. It broke, I think, a week or two ago that the Pfizer vaccine used fetal stem cells in the development of the vaccine.
now, this is a distinction that I would want to know, being on the research side of it. Were they fetal stem cells or the immunopluripotent stem cells?
From what I understand, it was the actual from aborted fetus stem cells.
Because that is very, very rare. And if those supplies are there, they have probably been sitting in a freezer forever, from forever ago. Because since the modern advent of immunopluripotent stem cells,
Yes.
right, iPSCs, since that invention of that technology, where essentially, for our audience who might not be aware, a big thing with the abortion community is that they're like, you're testing on babies and taking the cells and doing all that stuff, which in all reasonable science that I am familiar with, little to none of that happens anymore because scientists found a way to take regular body cells and make them from me, you, anybody, and revert to their stem cell form.
Yes.
And since they were able to do that, that has completely taken that out of the conversation. So,
So yeah, I don't have time to read through all the news articles, but
yeah.
that's what I've heard through the messages.
And I would be interested to read into that further.
Like it being from leaked emails from within the Pfizer organization.
Oh.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
considering that that's a big issue with abortion.
Yeah, but yeah.
Haters.
And I'm like, but getting back to it though, those vaccines, I'm saying, for people in other countries, they do not have the same access to the same vaccines. There are a number of other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And now Merck's miracle pill is trying to make its rounds. If you have not heard, Merck is another pharmaceutical company that is boasting a pill that supposedly prevents COVID, I think is their claim. Or
is that like the one you have to take daily or something?
Yes, it's really stupid. As an intervention.
And to answer the questions about why the vaccines are banned in other countries, I don't know the details, but I heard it was from some Icelandic countries, either like Norway, Iceland, or Greenland, I would think.
Could be.
They've banned, I think it was the Moderna vaccine. And I also heard there was another country that banned Pfizer, but I'm not entirely sure why. So,
and again, it's like, this is, I think, sometimes the challenge for us is how much this is scientific and they're basing off scientific evidence, and how much is it Belgium and Norway politics,
or if it's true,
right?
There's a lot of information out there that could be false.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm like, it's
double check.
Yeah, double check when we're like do something. If I'm saying get off the fence, I mean get off the fence. If we're saying we're not sure why this thing is, we're not sure.
He's saying get off the fence.
Get off the fence.
I'm not. I'm saying you can stay where you are.
Get off the fence.
Fuck you.
Get off the fence. If you're in Canada, and the U.S., get off the fence. Make a decision. Live your life. Okay.
Interesting. According to one of viewers, Italy, France, and Germany all banned the use of vaccine developed by the Oxford University because of reports of people developing serious blood clots after receiving the shot.
That is the AstraZeneca one.
That was from March.
Correct. And AstraZeneca had a concern of very particular instances of blood clot formations where that did happen. Now, it was to a point where, and I read up on this because Canada was, a lot of my family members were really concerned about this because AstraZeneca was one of the first vaccines available in Canada. So a lot of people were like, okay, AstraZeneca's here, but we've heard a lot about this concern about blood clots. And when I looked into it, it was that these blood clots happened, right? And part of the clinical study reporting is that it all has to be reported. No matter why that blood clot happened, you have to report it. And it was to a point where the study was, I think, I want to say 15 to 20,000 people, right? And you're talking about a very, very small percentage of those few of individuals that had a blood clot, and none of those blood clots, none of them could be directly linked to the vaccine, direct cause and effect. There was no causal indication when they looked into it.
Was there other underlining factors in there?
So they were saying that, there's a respect to the person's health and their medical file, but they said most of those people, I think there was something like, oh gosh, and I might be completely off on these numbers. I think it was 300 some odd instances of blood clots, and of those, they could explain 200 some odd of them from other medical reasons, right? They could not link any directly to the vaccine, but there's 100 some odd that were not easily explained. But even if it is 100 in a pool of 20,000, right? That's small, very small amount of the population is experiencing a blood clot of, unknown. And as the AstraZeneca vaccine has rolled out in places like Canada, etc., that has not seemed to pan out. There's not been this really high instance of blood clots or something like that. And it was actually a concern for younger people more than it was for older people. So, yes.
So we're not saying one way or the other about getting a vaccine. Go see a doctor to get an official opinion. And if you don't like his opinion, get a second opinion.
Yes.
Preferably a doctor's opinion, but...
Yes. Make good medical choices.
Yes.
This is... But yeah, and I could be completely... I'll be completely honest. I haven't seen those numbers in months.
Yes, do the research yourself. Things might have changed from when we've seen them.
Yes. So, but yeah, no, it's and I think that this gets us to the place where you had something else.
Well, yeah, I was trying to roll it back to vaccine mandates.
Vaccine mandates,
yes.
Right? So, I'm not sure if vaccine mandates are the right thing for right now, but I think that it has affected a large number of people around the world, where I think the global pressure to make this a part of a vaccine mandate system is going to be part of it.
Well, there's already people revolting about it everywhere in the world.
And I'm like...
There's been riots in Europe all over the place about a lot of mandates. Australia has gone full authoritarian with COVID-19 encampments. Yeah,
their lockdowns have been
very,
since the start of the pandemic.
Very harsh.
Australia and New Zealand have been some of the strictest when it comes to their vaccines and that sort of thing.
I feel like they stripped the freedoms out of their people. or what freedoms were left.
Yeah. My thing is lockdowns being notwithstanding, when it comes to vaccine mandates,
Well, we were supposed to have a lockdown for 2 weeks here in the U.S. and then it continued
right?
for about a year and a half now.
Well, exactly. I think that people are not ready for this, right? I think that was painfully obvious on all sorts of levels. Public health level being probably the most apparent and concerning.
Well, the big concern right now is economic. The lockdowns have completely destroyed the economy and the supply and of everything. People aren't working as much anymore. Um, that's the biggest thing with the vaccine mandates is I heard from some reports about Southwest Airlines shutting down tons of flights because of their vaccine mandate policy.
I think it's only Delta that is currently, when I saw it, I think this was a couple weeks ago. I think it was only Delta that is not requiring a vaccine
I think I heard today
to
that
work.
Southwest is rolling back on their requirements about the vaccine
Mm.
because they're canceling all the flights. No one's gonna work for them apparently.
And I think this, like, to me, lockdowns is a different conversation. I will have a different conversation about lockdowns. A vaccine mandate about this thing, right? There's a discussion to be had about efficacy, about reasonableness, about its being put forward, and whether it's a good idea or not. I understand that. A vaccine mandate is not oppression. And I have a really tough time when people are like, I'm being oppressed. You're not. This is not that conversation. This is as to whether a choice that is, by every scientific proof, good for you, right? Whether that is something that is going to be demanded or you do of your own volition. There's a conversation to be had there. I'm not minimizing a conversation. I'm saying that is very, very different to oppression, where it is actively putting something against your will that is bad, that is objectively bad, right? And I think there's been enough instances of oppression in this world where that is really rich to come and say a vaccine mandate is the same thing as oppression. Because it's a lot of other things. It's taking away your individual liberty of choice. It is doing a lot of other things. Oppressive, though, and to use that language that, you should actively, violently revolt against this in certain ways, as is happening in a lot of, councils and that sort of thing in government buildings, it's stupid.
So oppression's been thrown around a lot in recent days that the definition of it has been completely obliterated, in my opinion, that it doesn't mean what it should mean anymore.
Yes.
There's just so many cries of wolf.
Yeah. And I heard this actually. I was listening to Jon Stewart. He has a new show called The Problem with Jon Stewart. And for those of you who don't know who Jon Stewart is, he was the host of The Daily Show before Trevor Noah, and brilliant satire comedian. I think one of the best. And he not only boasts that resume, he is a large part, a huge reason why 9/11 first responders now have access to. It used to be they have a certain amount of funding for their medical expenses as a result of being at ground zero, and that funding was about to run out, and Jon Stewart was the person to go to Capitol Hill and go with the first responders and get that bill passed such that there is that is something guaranteed to those first responders for what is left of their lives. For a lot of them, unfortunately, that is the case because they are that sick. And so not just a very good comedic resume, but a very good humanitarian one as well. He said this in his show this past week, and I found it particularly poignant. Freedom on any level is not free. It requires different amounts of sacrifices from different people at different times in order to make it work.
Yes. But how many of those people willingly put those sacrifices forward?
And the thing is that, he brought up the example of generation involved in World War II, right? People were asked for their cooking supplies, pots and pans, to be recycled for different purposes. For women to give up their silk stockings, right, for certain things. And that generation of people, what is often regarded as the greatest generation in American history, did it. Whether it was men going to fight or women going to work in the factory, right, and work in an industrial way for a real significant part, they did it.
You also have to think that was also a period of time where the United States was actually unified for most people. Now it's pretty much divided in two.
But I would say that even, for instance, the African American individuals that went and fought in World War II, they knew they weren't getting the same deal as everybody else, right?
Yes.
They know that coming back home and doing all that stuff and going there and making that sacrifice and all that stuff, none of that was equal. They did it. They made the sacrifice same as anybody else, knowing that they were not getting equal, right? They still did it.
Yes.
And to me, that is what sacrifice means sometimes, is that it's not about fair. It's not always about equal. It cannot be that petty at all times because it just inherently isn't. If you want to tally up and get it perfectly balanced and the weights equal on each side, not going to happen, not ever. But if you want to keep this thing rolling, right, you got to do what you can to keep that thing rolling.
Well, that's why we have volunteer service for firefighters, for policemen, for EMTs. We have a volunteer military where people willingly go and do the tasks that others don't want to.
Right. And I'm saying in a certain way, though, especially in terms of the vaccine, when people are saying, right, this is oppressive. This is going against what I want to do, right? And I inherently disagree with it, right? That's fine if you want to. I don't want to hear no criticism then of Muhammad Ali electing not to be drafted in Vietnam then, right? Because these are the same people who are going to turn around and tell me all that. It got to be one way or the other. Either we can be free thinking and critical and we can act on those things, or we can do it this way, where it is compulsory, right? This is for the greater good, right? I think that, I think there's a better balance to be struck there, but a lot of people are one mind or the other, and it's often very hypocritical.
That's with a lot of people. They change their arguments a lot.
Yeah, I don't understand. People getting in fights and stuff on airplanes. I've seen a ton of these videos where people are getting into physical fights and stuff on airplanes.
About like the mask? Maybe?
About the masks, about all sorts of things with air hostesses, with other passengers.
That's right. Don't if you're arguing with someone that's not wearing a mask, why would you risk getting yourself possibly infected by fighting with them, like getting close to them and all that?
But I'm not always that person's been the aggressor. I've seen both, right? Where it is both. But also, you are saying you're not going to wear a mask on an airplane because you have the right. How many rights you had to give up to get on that damn plane to begin with?
A shit ton.
I am often pat down, okay?
Especially for you.
Especially Akbar over here.
There's
okay?
no right of privacy for you.
Yeah, my hands get swabbed every time, and I do it. Why?
Gunpowder residue?
Exactly. Why? Because my freedoms are so damn important? No, I want to catch my flight to Toronto and see my family, okay? Swab my damn hands. Get me on this airplane, right? I want to go. I don't understand where this little mask, they have a full body scan of your organs, right? Up in there. The cloth mask is where we're going to say, this is the limit. Now, if your thing is, right, we've been doing this now for a year and a half. Is it reasonable now to say we no longer need masks on airplanes? This is inconsistent. This is stupid. Like how we go out in a restaurant, we wear the mask to come in, and then as soon as we sit down to eat, we take it off. Isn't that stupid, right? It makes no difference. I'd say you have a point.
It is very inconsistent.
Right? You do have a point. But I'm saying if that is the policy in place, don't be extra. No need to be extra like that. And get into, no matter which side you're on, there is no reason to resort to that sort of physical interaction for that reason. Relax, go to the Orlando Petri dish, as we called it on the last one.
Yes.
And get your other disease, okay? From being in Orlando Airport.
Isn't Miami like the STD capital of the United States?
Is it? I'm not sure. As everyone knows, I'm clean, no herpes. It's. I know we in South Florida, but not that far south.
Or at least in Florida, it is.
Yeah, I'm
I don't know about the rest of the states.
Look, I'm sure at this point the rest of the states are just experiencing like a new, as we have like these different mutants, Delta and variant and all this stuff. I expect one day they'll just be like, the new STD coming out of Florida. It's
COVID related.
Yeah, it's a new COVID STD, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? But
another point that was brought up is COVID mutates so often that what's the point of getting a vaccine if it's not gonna work for the next variant that's gonna come through?
Knock wood. Viruses don't willingly mutate. They don't say, I want to mutate, I'm going to. It's not like the Hulk, where he's like, I'm always angry.
Well,
Bruh.
like you just said, there's like so many variants already out there.
And so far, the particular part of the spike protein, you might have heard this, the spike protein is the main part that these vaccines are made for, right? Are made to target. And there have been no significant changes in that spike protein through all the variants. The variants have made changes, not to that spike protein, right? There's a number of reasons why that spike protein was chosen, right? And it is not an easy place always for the virus to mutate that part and remain viable, as in able to replicate and continue to be a virus, right? So far, there have been the vaccine, as it's been set out, especially the 2-dose vaccines, have been able to withstand and hold up against any of the variants so far. So that is good. Certainly against, not always towards symptoms, getting a little cough or a little fever for a couple days, but certainly for hospitalization, which is the point in the first place. I don't care if I ever get sick from COVID. I don't want to end up in the hospital, or worst of all, put someone's grandparent in the hospital because of COVID. I don't want to do that.
That was my main reason behind getting the vaccine, is to protect my grandparents.
Right. And I personally, we don't get too emotional on this show, but personally, I know what it's like to lose a grandmother, right? And to go through that and see that hospital thing it's not great. Okay? That's the nicest way I can put it. It was terrible, right? Her pancreatic cancer was not preventable. Right? To me, this is why I made the decision. Me. I said, I'm not going to impose that on somebody else. That is damn well preventable, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to put someone else through that. So that was my rationale, my reason to do it. Doesn't have to be yours, but it was mine. So, but yeah, that's. Sometimes I just think like that, like, just. And that's what I don't like with like this outreach stuff, the vaccine incentives. Have a conversation with people, right? Why did I choose to get the vaccine, right? I'd say that reason. And sometimes with all the propaganda and the talking points and all that stuff, it just shoves your head further and further up your own ass, right? It happens to all of us. And if you really analyze and think back, what was the reason for you? It gets to a much more reasonable idea. Even if that person's like, I'm not going to get vaccinated, but that makes sense for you.
Yeah.
That's good. That's all we got to be, right?
I think for my my uncle and aunt, they got vaccinated because a friend of theirs got really, really sick and hospitalized, and they were like, I don't want that happening, so they went and got it.
Yep. It's that's why a lot of older folks now, they're even getting the boosters now, and that sort of thing. I don't know nearly enough about the boosters to comment, but if there's a lot of energy, a lot of interest in that, we'll get Dr. Smith back on here. I'm sure he'd be happy to.
I mean, for what he said last time, he already got the booster.
He has like 4. The man has like at least 4 shots. The last time I spoke to him.
So the normal shot.
The two normal ones, one for the South Africa variant and one for Delta.
Mm-hmm.
And his thing, if you ask him, he's like, well, I haven't grown a third arm yet or superpower, so I guess it's okay.
He got the short straw.
Yeah. And he's like, I would really like a third arm though. I'd be so much more productive.
Depends on where it is, honestly.
That's true.
Could be like
on your butt.
Hey, at least you can wipe well. Right?
Yep. A new era of hygiene. Butt arm.
I was thinking about more of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with the president having the arm right in the middle.
Yep.
Just surprise sucker punch.
Yeah. This is man. But yeah. No. Yeah. A lot of this is for freedom, and I hope that's one thing that I heard and I really understood. Freedom sometimes requires sacrifice, just like anything else. What family doesn't require sacrifice? What anything worthwhile requires a certain degree of.
So there's always going to be sacrifice.
Yeah.
But the choice should always be there. That's where I'm standing. You should always have a choice.
Right. And I would also agree with that. I would also agree.
So whether you're willing to make that sacrifice or not, you have the option to.
Yes. And that the balance of freedom and choice and all of these things is that in the instances where you do not have a choice, because there are plenty of those, right, in our society as we exist. Even in the absence of choice, does not automatically mean oppression. And
no, but I still think there should be a choice there.
And I'm not saying about the fact, but like simple things. 9/11 happened. Homeland security became a thing. Airport security went up. That wasn't no one's choice. We didn't vote on that.
It was unfortunate.
But there's nothing in my mind that says that that was the wrong decision. I'm not happy to do that because it's right. We don't want nothing like that happening never again, right?
Yes.
So,
But that's a sacrifice of freedom for more security.
right. And that's what I'm saying, even in the context of this vaccine.
There's still probably a ton of people out there that would rather sacrifice security for their freedom.
And I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. But I'm saying that is, I think that is an important and a reasonable distinction. People can have their opinions one way or the other. We're all about having opinions. My thing is, that is a reasonable thing that happened. And that if something like that can happen and it is reasonable, there is a precedent that other things might come up and that might be reasonable. Just because it's new doesn't mean there's any less reason to consider,
Well, I
okay,
think
this is something that we might need to set a little bit more concrete.
before jumping the gun, I think since it's new, it should be scrutinized and discussed thoroughly before any major decision is made. Because right now it's just being passed by executive decree, basically, about the vaccine mandates in the federal government. It has not been passed through Congress at all.
Right. And that there is a legitimacy then. I would say, and tell me if I'm mischaracterizing it, by getting it approved by a Congress, there is a element of legitimacy to that.
Yes. So I believe it can only be enforced for 30 days or 60 days.
Mm.
And then it would need to be approved by Congress by then.
Okay. Because, yeah, I think that...
And Congress is where representatives discuss. Or should be discussing.
Should be discussing.
Should.
As we discussed last week. Or last time.
I wish we had that on their show. But we were discussing how the way the government should be working is people discussing and compromising on things, and that is not happening.
Mm-mm.
So nothing gets done.
It's less compromising now, and it's more, well, I did a favor for you, so now you have to do one for me.
Yeah.
Irrespective of what that favor might be. Right?
That's a lot of it nowadays.
And that's...
I blindly scratch your back, you blindly scratch mine.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I think that for the mandates, my biggest question about the mandates is not one of efficacy, because the vaccines are shown to, from a public health perspective, the priority goal is 1, people not die, 2, hospitals not get overwhelmed. The vaccine is inarguably the best method to making sure those two things don't happen, right? That evidence is clear, scientifically speaking, right? So my question is that, and as I touched on earlier, based on the number of people vaccinated, based on the predicted number of people who have gotten COVID, recovered from it, and now have antibodies themselves, how pertinent and effective would a vaccine mandate push from here to here, or from here to here, or from here to here, or from here to here, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that prediction, and how significant is it? If it is a reasonable prediction, and it is something that has a very high ceiling, that we can really push up into a thing, and that has a scientific reason for being that way, then yes, right? There's a precedent for that.
So that's not the only thing that needs to be considered about the mandate, though. The other thing is, how is it going to affect people in general with employment? How is it going to affect companies, because they're trying to push that any company over 100 employees must require all their employees to be vaccinated or provide proof of a weekly vaccine or weekly COVID test, or they get fined like 100,000 or something.
Right. There's a lot of as these proposals go through. There's a lot there. One, harsh punishments, which I'm not particularly for. Right? Why hurt a small business for trying to be a small business? Right? Two, as I said, I think in the U.S. though, access to vaccines are not an issue.
No.
Right? So access is not an issue. So I'm not seeing so clear cut why the fact that a small business would have to mandate a vaccine would be an issue. If you are talking about a vaccine mandate and the reasoning for one in the first place, why is that an additional consideration?
Well, they're trying to find ways to force people to get the vaccine currently.
Yes.
That's essentially why they're doing it.
Yes. And as I said, I think the best argument that can be made against that is to say herd immunity or whatever is X%. We are in and around Y%, right, compared to X. A vaccine mandate would create a Z% increase in whatever.
So it would only increase, though, by the number of people on the fence. The people who chose not to get the vaccine and won't ever get the vaccine aren't not going to get the vaccine, even if there is a mandate. Maybe a few will, but I don't see them switching. They'll just leave the job. So you have a huge section of people that are not working now, that were already stressed on the lack of workers in the economy. I think there was 4.3 million job openings, and only like 300,000 were filled in the last quarter.
But you see, that boggles my mind. That boggles my mind a little bit. That somehow, right? And albeit I don't know what these jobs are. It boggles my mind that someone would, as I'm going to characterize it, leave a good paying job that's supporting your family after a year and a half of lockdowns. You're just going to say deuces to that job and peace out because you don't want to take a vaccine?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the person's choice, but I'm like, that don't seem like a smart choice.
Everyone has their own reason.
But I'm saying, it just irrespective of anything, I would not turn around and say, that is a reasonable decision. That is a well-founded decision. You told them, right?
At least they're standing by their values, though.
Is it a value, though? That's what I'm saying. How is it a value? And we spoke about this before. How is this a value that, and this gets to the oppression thing. How is this a value to take such a robust stance on?
We don't know why they're not taking it. It could be a number of reasons. Religious, could be allergies, could be literally anything. We don't know why they're not taking it.
Without, I think, the number of people who have...
Most of them are religious exemptions.
So religious leaves in the realm of mainly the Hasidic, some of the Hasidic Jew population, Jehovah's Witness, right? It's very strict about that. And
Christianity?
Not Christianity.
It is if
well, Jehovah's Witness, technically, as much as Jehovah's Witnesses.
It would be if the report about Pfizer using fetal tissue in their studies.
Well, then take Moderna.
True.
Right? It's that there's... That's what I'm saying. It's like, I think for the number of people, as you said, it's not an insignificant number of people who are not vaccinated at this point, right? But it is, I think of that, the people who have a medical reason, right, to not get the vaccine, or the people who would have a religious reason to not get a vaccine. In the same way, these, for religious reasons, the same people who can't have a blood transfusion, right, if they were ridiculously ill. That is an astronomically small part of the population. Very, very small, right? So I'm like, of the people who are actively making this decision, a spiritual one and a medical one, both reasonable, by the way, as much as people have that, right? How does this become outside of those things? Medical one is just objective.
Mm-hmm.
The one of spirituality is a value, right? And religion and belief and First Amendment rights.
Mm-hmm.
Get that. Other people, though, I'm like, what? You gonna leave your job?
There's a lot of positions open right now. I don't know why people aren't choosing to go back to work.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't think that is a reasonable position for a reasonable person to do. And I'm like, and somebody needs to just say that, right? Like, I'm like, why are you gonna do that? This isn't, and that's what I'm saying. I understand people have their strong opinions. I understand people are having this conversation. This is not a value thing. Unless it's for that religious purpose. This ain't a value thing. This is, to me, there's a real scientific argument to be made for the pertinency of what a vaccine mandate would do and the additional benefit that would cause, or a medical one. I haven't heard another reasonable argument to be made that is like, you know, oh, this is important. It's gotten blown far out of proportion. Very far.
Gunner's saying you can easily leave your job if it's requiring a vaccine. Plenty of other jobs available paying rather well currently.
No, I mean, yeah, but I'm saying is
don't have the requirement currently.
Right, and I'm saying is that, like, if you're gonna have a national, say, take it to the most extreme level, a national vaccine mandate,
Mm-hmm.
right? It becomes a thing, maybe not for adults, but you say the COVID-19 vaccine now is going to be part of MMR, right? It's MMR plus COVID for
I'd be willing to bet 100% that if it does get passed federally, Florida would not enforce it at all.
Yeah, and I'm like, my thing is that why does that need to be the case? Right? This is done. We don't have people like FDR who have polio anymore.
Well, you have to go back. It's down to the root. It's their choice if they want to leave their job or not.
Exactly, but I'm saying is that, like, it's your choice, but I'm saying there are reasonable choices and there are unreasonable choices that are objectively the case. If you're going to say...
Well, that's freedom for you. There's going to be people who have reasonable choices and there's people with unreasonable choices, but they're allowed to make that choice.
And I think what concerns me, though, is there's such a large part of the population who call themselves patriots, who call themselves this, that, the other thing. Extremely large part. Right, Katie? And sacrifice seems to be a very far thing on their mind in this situation, which is calling you on your shit, right? Because that is not squared in my book. It's just not. And come around and tell me you're oppressive and all this stuff. I'm like, nah, Nah, bro.
Well, they have their own ideal direction that the government should be going, like everyone does. And when things are not going their ideal direction, they would not be willing to sacrifice anything for it. And that's what's happening. They'd sacrifice for values going this way, but would not do it the other way around. And they're perfectly okay to do that.
Yeah, I can't get on board with that. I'm like, if, I said to a large part of the country, I'm like, this is, and I don't get why, again, it's not just a political argument to be made. It's not conservative versus liberal here. There's a huge portion of liberals that are against the vaccine. Huge, right? That are anti-vax and that sort of thing. It doesn't make sense on either portion because I'm like, what sense? They're like, because their thing is the pharmaceutical companies, this, that, the other thing, why doesn't this work? And it was developed so fast, and pharmaceutical companies are inherently evil, and they want to make you sick all the time, and all this stuff. I'm like, right. Even if that is your opinion, right? And there is a large part of drug companies that is shady.
There's one interesting conspiracy theory about pharmaceutical companies looking to cure cancer, that they have already had a cure for cancer. They won't share it because then all their sources of revenue would go away.
Let me share something that is not a conspiracy theory. Because it goes off of it, though. It bounces off of it. I know someone who shall remain nameless who came up with a technology to use an ultrasound. Ultrasound like they do to, image a baby in a pregnant woman. To use an ultrasound to 100% clear glaucoma.
Are we on a hit list now?
A biopharmaceutical company bought the rights to that paper, buried it, and now have intellectual property over it.
Yeah, I can see that. So they could have cures for other things.
Right. I know that one's from a horse's mouth, right? And I'm like, so I understand the concern that pharmaceutical companies can be shady as hell. I'm already on a hit list. The research I do, I'm already on a hit list. I might as well, right? I'm like,
hey, you gotta get your paper out there first.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm going to be, okay? But I do research on Roundup, the pesticide. So, yeah, Bayer does not. I might as well, right? So this is why I have been called a sellout to a biopharm. They're like, oh man, you sold out. You're a stooge for a pharmaceutical companies. I was like, shut the up.
Who said that?
I was like, sit down, right?
Wait, what?
I was like, your precious Facebook posts aren't going to be seen by anybody, okay? I'm trying to publish an article here that might have serious implications, right? I'm like, don't even come to me with that because it's not reasonable.
Oh no, we're past time.
Are we past time?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It is 9:04.
It is 9:04.
Wrap up time.
Yeah, wrap up time. This just flew by. We gotta have, because again, we don't always agree, and that's fine. It's this is how it should be.
We very much disagree today.
Yes, and this is how you civilly disagree with each other.
Oh, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you.
Roar. It's but yeah, it's okay. It's how we have a better conversation, I feel. It's how we have a better conversation.
And you know what we're gonna do after talk have pizza, and yeah, that's about it.
And just chill out. And yeah. So, Paul, thank you for a great conversation. To the people who are joining us on the chat,
Yes.
thank
you,
you
guys.
so much for interacting with us. Your point of views and so on are great. Really, really enjoy that. Even if I might, I hope I didn't directly call anyone a dumbass, but if I did, I stand by it.
Wow. Wow. We're going out that way.
Yep.
So for those people, write your opinion down in the comments on YouTube, preferably. We'll try to go through them on what your thoughts are about the vaccine mandates and freedom.
Yes.
And maybe we'll come back to them.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us this week. Episode 12.
Episode 12 wrapped up.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Are we gonna do
Wise words.
wise words? Wise words.
Wise words.
I will leave my wise words as this. This podcast is dedicated to someone very, very special. If you might have seen in the beginning, a very important person to me passed away on Sunday. This podcast exists because during COVID, I could no longer do improv, and Paul and I came up with this great idea to do a podcast that is off the cuff, live, just and improvised, as honest as you see it. That's why sometimes we look not so prepared, because we try to be honest.
Yeah. And some of the inspiration came from our talks just in lab,
Yes.
hanging out, just discussing things. So we just wanted to, stream.
100% off the cuff, though. Nothing's prepared. And Mark Duncan was the person who inspired me to get involved in improv at all, who pushed me, got me involved with a great improv community at my undergraduate university, and just kept pushing me forward. So without him, I don't think I would have had the guts to even think about doing I certainly wouldn't have had the guts to do improv in the first place. And two, I would not have approached Paul to do this podcast. So thank you, Mark, for everything that you did. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Good night, everyone.